It would always make me wonder when I'd hear people talking about how much they were looking forward to change and growth in their lives. And I'd think to myself, am I missing something here? I should probably want change and growth as well, right? But the thing is, I was just really comfortable and happy doing what I was doing, and I never wanted that to end. Sometimes, though, we don't get to choose. I didn't go looking for change, but change found me. And all I had to do was figure out a way to roll with that change or get rolled over by it. I look at this old suitcase of mine, and it reminds me of just how much change I've seen in my life in the last 2 years. You see, before this old suitcase and I were made redundant, I used to drag it around the world as cabin crew for Air New Zealand, and I did that for 20 years because I absolutely loved it. Of course, I loved the travel and the amazing destinations, but more than that, I loved that special bond and friendship that I'd formed with my crew family over the years. And you probably won't believe this, but I actually enjoyed talking to the passengers. I would hear the most amazing stories from people from all over the world, stories that I would never hear if I had a regular 9-to-5 job. But it was so much more than a job for me. It was a lifestyle. And I'd invested so much of my life into this company, this career, that it became a huge part of who I thought I was. It's funny to think now just how much I've changed since I unpacked that suitcase for the very last time. And I remember this day really clearly. It was after my last flight for Air New Zealand, and I'd packed and unpacked that suitcase 1,000 times before, but knowing that this was going to be the last time that I was ever going to do that left me with a huge sense of loss. Of course, I'd lost my financial stability, but I'd also lost that connection with my crew family. And I think the thing that really struck me was that I'd lost the picture of what I thought the rest of my life was going to look like. One day after the redundancy, I was lying on my couch at home in New Zealand, and there was plenty of these days. I was just racking my brain trying to think what it was I was going to do next. And this particular day, I'd been there on the couch all day. My boys came home from school, and as usual, they just burst in the door, and they saw me on the couch and threw themselves on me and asked me, "Dad, what did you do today?" And I said, "Nothing." And my youngest son looked at me and he said, "Why?" And I didn't know the answer to that. I didn't know why. But that simple question, why, made me realize that I had to do something. I had to get up off the couch. And that reminded me of something that my grandmother used to say to me many years ago when I was a schoolboy, and I'd come home from school, and if I threw my bag on the floor and flopped down on the couch, my grandmother would say, "Hey, get up, why are you nothing doing?" But she would say it with a much better Fijian accent. And also on this day, the same day that my boys asked me why, I received a message, it was a text message actually, from a very good friend of mine who'd known how much I'd been struggling. And it had a quote in it, and it really resonated with me. I just want to share that with you. If you can't fly, then run. And if you can't run, then you should walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, just keep moving forward. And those words from Martin Luther King Jr. and that call to action from my grandmother all those years ago were the spark that I needed to get up off the couch. And I spent the next few days just reflecting on who I was, what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I thought about many things. And one idea kept coming up in my mind, the idea of returning to Fiji. You see, I was born here, but I was raised in New Zealand. So could this horrible situation and this adversity be turned into an opportunity to return to Fiji? But what would we do when we got here? Well, we had a little side hustle in New Zealand, and what it was that we would make peanut butter at home in the kitchen, and we'd sell it to delicatessens and markets, and we even had a few supermarkets that we supplied. And actually, the idea for this little side hustle had started in Fiji a few years before. We'd been on holiday visiting my sister, and our boys loved peanut butter, luckily enough, but we just couldn't find any on the shelves here, any natural peanut butter, so we decided that we would make our own. And one day, we were driving, and we saw this guy selling peanuts on the side of the road. He's there all the time, actually. And so we stopped and bought a couple of bags and went back to my sister's house. And the boys had a lot of fun putting, different Fijian natural products into it. And we made the most delicious Fiji-inspired peanut butter. And when we got back to New Zealand, we just kept making it because the boys loved it and our friends enjoyed it. And it turned into this little side hustle. So could we take this little New Zealand side hustle and turn it into a fully fledged business that would support us in our new lives in Fiji? Well, with our very limited business experience, we could only see two reasons why not. It turns out there's a lot more. But the first one was that we were absolutely terrified. And the second was that we had no idea where to start. But I can tell you that something really powerful happens when you make that mental switch and you just decide. Decide, that's the key, that you're going to do something. And you take that first step. And then the second step becomes a little bit clearer, and so you take that. And yes, we got stuck many, many times, and we still do. But what always seems to happen, and this is really cool, is that somebody or something would come into our lives at the right time to show us that next step forward. So if you can't run, then walk. It's been really, really hard, I have to be honest. If I'd known how hard it was going to be, Fiji, I may not have had the courage to take that first step. But I'm so glad that I did, because I've learnt more in these last 2 years about myself than I did in the previous 20. And most of the things that I've learnt have been good. But there are some things that I've learnt about myself that I'm not particularly proud of. And, one is that I can be a little bit impatient. And some people have said that I'm a bit pushy. It's a bit unfair. But I know that these personality traits have only come out because I'm no longer just cruising in my comfort zone at 30,000 feet. I'm down here in the trenches of small business that's covered in peanut butter. And, most days it's good, but I think like all small business owners, there are days that the anxiety can take over. There are days when you wonder if you've made the right decision. Where's this business going? Where's the next dollar coming from? And when I worry about that, I try and remember something that my very first cabin crew trainer told me all those years ago. And it was actually on the day that we graduated. And if you can picture a room full of graduating flight attendants, the excitement level is right up there. And so I'm looking around the room and everybody's opening up their very first rosters. And I hear someone yell out, yes, I've got a 4-night Honolulu trip. And someone down here's got, 3 nights LA, sweet. And then someone says, I've got a 2-night Hong Kong. So I'm really excited. I cross my fingers and I open up my very first roster and it says, Nadi day return. There and back. And I'm really disappointed. I'm sorry, Nadi, but I am. And my trainer, he sees how disappointed I am. And he comes over and he says to me, and I'll never forget this, he says, Gary, it's not about the destination. It's all about the journey. And I just about slapped him. I'm really glad I didn't though, because it would have been a very short career. But looking back, I can see the truth in that really annoying saying. It doesn't really matter what happens or where we end up. The redundancy taught me that. What matters is the experiences and the learnings that we get on this amazing journey that we're on. So if one day change is forced upon you, then I hope that you'll see that change or that adversity as an opportunity. And I hope that you'll trust yourself to take that first step. Vinaka. Good.